right, the December 20th Board of Education meeting is now called to order. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and live streamed on the internet. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room, so please make sure you read those if you have not already. Item 2.03 is approval of the minutes. There has been one small correction to the previously posted minutes from December 6th. On page 7, 2 lines from the bottom, it should now read, AACPS is $1 billion corporation, not $1 million corporation. We wouldn't be doing very much if we were just $1 million corporation. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? All right. Okay, item 2.04 is establish agenda order, and the agenda stands as printed. Item 2.05 is recognitions, and we have no board recognitions tonight. Item 2.06 is school and community highlights. Ms. Nally.
I would like to recognize the passing of a wonderful community member, Gus Leonis. He ran Annapolis Gourmet for many, many years and provided many elementary school children, including my grandson, with lots of treats. They would always stop by to Mr. Gus's, and he was such a wonderful, active member of the West Annapolis community, and he will be sorely missed. He passed away 2 days ago. Thank you, Gus.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to say thank you and congratulations to about 30 of our brightest and best musicians in the county who were part of the BSO side-by-side concert last week at the Meyerhoff. I had the privilege of being there along with Dr. Arlotto, Mrs. Jackson, Mr. Kaufman. If I saw him earlier tonight, I'm not sure he's here tonight, but and just a number of our high school principals, as well as County Executive Steve Shue, who's been a longtime supporter of the BSO as well. One of our students, Casey Lebkicker from Old Mill High School, was a soloist on the viola and just gave an awesome performance on, if memory serves me, it was a Handel piece that she was part of. And, you know, again, aside from their amazing talent and brilliance, you know, orchestral music is so important because it's not like we see today where so many artists go out and do their own thing and then they overlay everything later on. These guys are playing as an orchestra and as a team effort, and hats off to them. So again, congratulations to all of them.
I had the pleasure of attending winter chorus and band concerts at Monarch Global Academy, and perhaps some of those students will someday play in the BSO. I can't see that now, but it will happen. They are very young and starting out, and but they're great fun, and it was always a great time of year to go and see what's going on with the music departments in our schools. So now item 2.07 is the CRASC report. Mr. Curran.
Good evening, President Hubbard, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Connor Curran, and I'm a freshman at Old Mill High School and the Secretary of Education of CRASC. This month, there has been many incidents within the county involving harassment of students. Incidents have been between rivals, as well as those caused by childish disagreements. Sadly, there was even an issue involving harassment of a transgender student. We must represent all students, and all means all. We as a county must be inclusive of everyone and not marginalize those who are different, as well as celebrate our differences. Because we as a county are more diverse now more than We are more diverse now than ever before. It shouldn't matter what school you go to or what activities you participate in. We all must be treated and disciplined equitably. We cannot let the actions of few impact the reputation of the entire student body of our school system. Crask is poised and ready to help AACPS in any way possible. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent the students of Anne Arundel County, and happy holidays to all.
Thank you, Connor. All right. Item 3.01 is an information item, the presentation of the superintendent's recommended fiscal year 2019 operating and capital budgets. Dr. Arlotto, take it away.
Good evening, President Hummer, Vice President Gilliland, members of the Board of Education, elected officials, colleagues, students, parents, and county residents. 14 days ago, this Board of Education conducted its latest review of a new strategic plan for our school system. The 5-year blueprint, set to be formally adopted in February, will serve as the driving force for our continuing work to elevate all students and eliminate all gaps. That plan will offer a set of guiding values that I believe speak not only to who we are and should be, but to the kind of children we aspire to cultivate in our classrooms across our county every day. These values have not been drawn up in the isolation of a conference room, but arrived at after input from scores of people heavily invested in our school system in one way or another. Students, parents, staff, community members, elected officials, the public at large, and members of this board were invited to provide their thoughts on the form this plan should take at a variety of forums and venues throughout our county over the past year. To ensure the input reflected the diversity we know is critical to our school system, we held a special forum for Latino parents conducted in Spanish at one of our elementary schools. The thoughts of those who have provided input to date have done more than help shape our values. They have defined them. What emerged was a clear sense of, as the plan states, the need for us as a school district to become a place where all feel welcome, valued, and supported as we learn and work together toward achieving student success. When it gets right down to it, our values and the plan can be summarized in 3 simple words, each building on the other: relationships, rigor, and readiness. The foundation of success for our school system starts with our relationships, first and foremost with students, but every bit as important with our core of incredible employees, parents, community and business partners, and colleagues in city, county, state, and federal governments. Helping our children believe that they can reach their full potential and overcome any obstacle that might be in their path begins by knowing who they are as individuals. It also involves us, not just those of us in our school system, but all of us in this county, believing in and instilling hope in all of our children. I've said it before, and I repeat it emphatically today. When it comes to elevating all students and eliminating all gaps, the singular goal on which we and every school system will ultimately be measured, all must mean all. It must mean that we endeavor to support every single student, no matter the starting place at which they begin their journey or the place at which they currently stand in our school system. We owe the same to our advanced learners as we do those who begin behind grade level or with other hurdles to leap, to provide the tools and opportunities necessary for each of them to succeed. We must understand that equity and equality are not synonymous, and be prepared and willing to customize support that addresses our students' individual needs. We have experienced, for example, unprecedented growth in our English language learner population. increases of nearly 36% over the last 5 years and 145% over the last 10. That has led us to create the Newcomer Center at Annapolis High School to provide extensive English language support and education for students with interrupted formal education and limited literacy in their native language as well as in English. The center also provides services for overage, undercredited high school students who are just beginning their journeys in our school system. Our burgeoning immigrant population has also led to enhancements at our International Student and Family Welcome Center. We have relocated the center to space at Phoenix Academy to allow staff to better serve more students and families than ever before. The center is the first point of contact for students coming from U.S. territories or other countries to Anne Arundel County and offers a full array of registration, academic assessment, and informational resources. The building and enhancing of relationships must also extend to our more than 10,000 employees, for it is they who are on the front lines of our battle for educational excellence. Most think of those employee support relationships in terms of compensation and benefits. However, we must recognize the impact that our escalating enrollment has, most importantly on those in our schools, but in reality on everyone on our AACPS team. Since September 30 of last year, we have grown by nearly 1,500 students, likely making us now the fourth largest school system in the state of Maryland. Over the last 3 years, we've seen an increase of more than 3,200 students. Building and enhancing solid relationships entails mutual recognition of the challenges that exist, and addressing rising class sizes is certainly one of those areas. Parents and community and business partners are also integral to our success, and the many ways in which they support our school system and students cannot be overstated. Consider, for example, the 664,000 hours that volunteers donated to our schools last year. While the independent sector organization puts the value of that at about $17.5 million, in reality, it is priceless. We also must not overlook our critical relationships with city, county, and state governments. We have worked very hard over the years to cultivate collaborative connections on all three fronts, because they not only enhance our efforts to help our children, but aid in the creation of better and more vibrant communities. We've been privileged to team with the Anne Arundel County Health Department on a variety of issues over the years. Our school nurse program is efficient and an effective one that caters to the needs of all of our students, not just with emergency situations that arise, but also by addressing routine and critical medicinal and other needs for our children. Through the school nurse program, we have also partnered with the health department for many years to administer flu immunizations to elementary school students, helping to decrease absenteeism and increase academic achievement. The health department has also led the way across our state on the emerging opioid epidemic. Long before legislation was created making it a mandate, it was Anne Arundel County's health department that developed a plan to stock Narcan in all school health rooms and train personnel in its use. Our collaboration as a part of County Executive Steve Shue's opioid task force, particularly in relation to the Not My Child events held in schools across our county, has also helped increase awareness not only about the dangers and tragic consequences of addictions, but about the warning signs that indicate a child or an adult may be in trouble. County State's Attorney Wes Adams and the county's Crisis Response Unit have also provided crucial assemblies in our schools to help students understand these dangers. We have been proud as well to work closely with the city and county police departments on myriad issues to help keep our students safe. These include not just incidents that occur in our schools, but those which have their genesis in neighborhoods and spill over into our buildings. Both police agencies have been involved in staff training for crisis situations, and our partnerships continue to involve conversations and initiatives about the emerging gang issues in and around Annapolis. Outside of our schools, we've also had the committed partnership of the Anne Arundel County Library, the onset of the SAIL card system, which provides library accounts for every single student with no late fees, is a huge help in our literacy efforts, particularly for our young learners. The relationships we develop in and out of our classrooms set the stage for the rigor we are striving to provide our students. We have talked often about our magnet signature programs, which offer cutting-edge instruction to middle and high school students across our county. In the STEM program at Central Middle School, for instance, students are continuing to work with Climb Zone to design fitness climbing walls using a heart rate assessment. Some of that work can be seen at the Laurel Climb Zone, where student-designed walls are open for community use. At Old Mill High School and Old Mill Middle School North, students have engaged in an international experience through interactions with the National Folkloric Troupe of Egypt. Through these programs and others, we must continue to challenge our students to think beyond their current academic capabilities and envision their greatness 5, 10, or 20 years down the road. We must also have the same mindset elsewhere in our school system. Our highly effective Triple E program, now in place at elementary schools in the Chesapeake, Meade, North County, Northeast, and Southern clusters, has provided thousands of young students with more dedicated time to engage in project-based learning, explore 21st century content, and develop skills that will be critical to them in the years to come. In areas such as STEM and society, arts and humanities, global studies, and world culture and language, we are exposing students to new ideas and allowing them to think about concepts and careers that may otherwise remain largely unfamiliar to them. This type of exposure can never happen early enough. At Park Elementary, for example, kindergarten students engage in STEM instruction by looking at how parts of a wind-powered machine work together to make a system. We also impart that rigor to those students preparing to begin their careers right after high school. Our widely acclaimed Centers of Applied Technology offer students hands-on instruction that is second to none. Nowhere is the intersection of relationships and rigor more evident than when partners in a variety of industries work side by side with students to provide the most up-to-date training possible. Each year, approximately 1,200 of our students complete career technology education programs, preparing them for success in industry as well as post-secondary education. Last year, our CTE students earned 565 college credits while in high school, which equates to $62,000 in savings for students and parents. Additionally, CTE students earned awards and scholarship funds from more than 30 business partners and organizations. Buoyed by relationships and rigor, we are moving more and more students to a place of college and career readiness. Our intentional focus on our 9th grade promotion rate, perhaps the foremost indicator of whether a student will be successful in high school, is paying great dividends. A year ago, using a combination of indicators, we identified nearly 1,600 incoming freshmen across our 12 comprehensive high schools, Chesapeake Science Point, the Phoenix Academy, and the Mary Moss J. Albert Adams Academy as being in danger of not being promoted to the 10th grade at the end of the year. Through focused and customized support and interventions, nearly 86% of them entered this school year as sophomores. System-wide, nearly 96% of all 9th graders last year earned promotion to the 10th grade. The reward for that, and all of our work, of course, comes on the graduation stage. Since 2010, our graduation rate has increased by more than 6 percentage points to nearly 90%, and scholarship offers to our seniors have increased by $91.4 million to $156.3 million for the class of 2017. We also have created more prosperous futures for more students heading directly into the workforce. At our Centers of Applied Technology last year, 622 students earned industry certifications in everything ranging from geriatric nursing assistant to Cisco Certified Network Associate. Results like these and the 9th grade promotion rates I just mentioned leave us with a bright outlook and high expectations for future years. The sharp upward spike in our student population over the last 3 years has created challenges for us, particularly in light of the fiscal restraints within Anne Arundel County. I want to say very clearly that we are cognizant of these restraints. We want to do our part. We understand the bigger picture, and we are thankful for the work of both the county executive and the county council to assist our school system and our students. We're also proud of and continue to be committed to efficient operating procedures that ensure the prudent expenditure of taxpayer resources. A year ago, we worked with the county to allocate $22.5 million in one-time funding as we implement a long-term plan to secure ongoing quality health care for our employees. That plan included sacrifices from our employees who saw their share of health care premiums rise. The necessity and urgency of that initiative meant that, in the existing financial environment, we could not provide additional classroom teachers for our increasing student population. This year, we simply must address those needs. There is no escaping this reality. Included in the $1.19 billion operating budget I recommend to the board today, there are 238.7 positions, with 94% of those allocated for employees who interact with students every day. This budget requests 190.7 teachers, of which 106 are to address overall enrollment growth, and 30 more will be allocated to reducing already bulging class sizes. I am also recommending 25 teaching positions to address the rise in our English language learner population. Our English language acquisition teachers, spread across 113 schools, have average caseloads of approximately 49 students, many of whom have intense needs in both regard to language acquisition as well as overall literacy and academic skills. We've got to help them help our children. Additionally, this budget includes 16 positions to address the needs of special education students. These positions are only part of my recommended plan to help our teachers and other employees, however. We must continue to find ways to properly compensate them, and this budget allocates $20.8 million for compensation increases. Subject to negotiations with employee bargaining units, that is sufficient to fund a step increase for all eligible employees, in addition to a 1% cost of living adjustment for all employees. When it comes to the success of our students, it's about people. Ladies and gentlemen, we must continue to take care of our people. We also must continue to address the increasing variety and widening scale of social and emotional needs of our students. We discussed this issue a year ago, and nothing in the last 12 months has lessened that load. My recommended budget contains $1.1 million for 10.4 positions dedicated to these efforts. Included among them are 5.4 school counselors, 2 school psychologists, 2 social workers, and 1 additional pupil personnel worker. The counselors will allow us to provide full-time counseling services at Ferndale Early Education Center and additional counselors at Broadneck, Hebron-Harmon, Marley, Nantucket, and Solly Elementary Schools. Those 5 elementary schools all have enrollments of more than 790 students. To help our students, we must also help our family members, particularly those who do not speak English. This budget includes $137,000 for 2 additional bilingual facilitators to provide interpretation and translation services for families, bringing the number of those crucial employees to 21. The coming year will bring the opening of the Carrie Whedon Early Education Center, the 3rd such center in our county. I have included $1.8 million for 15.9 positions to open the center, which will be dedicated to housing and supporting pre-kindergarten students in South County. I mentioned earlier our need to continue to increase rigorous opportunities for our students. The current year's budget did not allow us to continue the expansion of the EEE program, and it is essential that we resume this effort. I have included $1.2 million for 12.5 positions to implement this initiative in the 9 elementary schools in the Annapolis cluster. This is a proven program that sparks creativity and innovation among students, and we must get back on the path to implement it in all of our elementary schools. Also crucial to the success of our students is our ability to educate them in 21st century facilities. The $216 million recommended capital budget contains construction funding for 9 major school projects, as well as funding for open space classroom enclosures, classroom additions, and additions for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten students. The construction funding allocates $3.8 million for Manorview Elementary, $4.5 million for High Point Elementary, $15.6 million for George Cromwell Elementary, $7.9 for Jessup Elementary, $6.7 million for Arnold Elementary, $19.7 million for Edgewater Elementary, $18.2 million for Tyler Heights Elementary, and $16.9 million for Richard Henry Lee Elementary School. These are not new projects, but existing ones that we must complete on facilities that are well past due to be renovated or replaced. As we look into the future, we are also moving full steam ahead with construction of the new Crofton Area High School. This facility will be the first new high school in our county in nearly 40 years when it opens in 2020. And this budget contains $54.8 million toward its construction. Also included in the capital budget recommendation is $7.5 million for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten additions at Maryland City and Riviera Beach elementary schools, and $10 million for classroom additions at Marley and Solly elementary schools, and a gymnasium and program addition at Glen Burnie Park Elementary School. Despite the challenges we face every day, we are doing great things for our more than 82,000 students. The strategic plan this board is contemplating charts the course for relationships, rigor, and readiness. This budget will help us begin to navigate that course and to enhance even more the education we provide every single one of our children. I thank you for the privilege of allowing me to be part of this great team and this awesome endeavor.
Thank you, Dr. Arlotto. Before I open for board and public comment, I want to share that there will be 2 budget hearings where the public and stakeholder groups can share their budget priorities with the board. That will be Tuesday, January 9th at 6 p.m. at Old Mill High School and Thursday, January 11th at 6 p.m. here in the boardroom. The board will be holding a budget workshop here in the boardroom at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, January 16th. This is the time when the board will ask in-depth questions and analyze the superintendent's budget. The public is welcome at that workshop, but no public testimony will be taken. So now, are there any board questions or comments at this time? Ms. Korbelak.
I just want to say thank you, and I think we need to add an R to the list. This is realistic. Thank you for the budget presentation tonight.
And I will echo that. I think that touches on many of the needs, and I look forward to delving into it further.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So are there any public comments at this time? Come on up. Okay, this would only be public comment on the budget. Okay.
Just for the budget?
This is just about the budget. Okay, so no problem. Is there any comment about the budget at this time? I do have one card, and I see someone else coming forward. Holly, oh no, this Ms. Kleiderline would be under general comment. So come on up if you want to speak on the budget. Come ahead.
Hello, thank you. Hi, my name is Shanika Henson. I am the representative on the Annapolis City Council for Ward 6. Thank you, Madam President, Vice President, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. Thank you for presenting a budget that, as they said, was very realistic. I'm here to advocate on behalf of Tyler Heights Elementary. Tyler Heights sits in Ward 6 in Annapolis, Maryland. I graduated from Tyler Heights from the 5th grade there. It was a wonderful experience for me. However, Tyler Heights that I graduated from is the same Tyler Heights that students are attending today. Tyler Heights was built in 1962. Its storied history is that when they were desegregating, integrating our Annapolis schools, Tyler Heights was built to relieve some of the congestion once we took our 3rd Street Elementary and 5th Street Elementary and integrated those schools. So Tyler Heights, from its very inception, has been a place that was designed to kind of capture folks that were displaced when we integrated. Now Tyler Heights sits and it's 75% has a Latino population there. You all were kind enough to host a workshop there for parents that was in the Spanish language because it really serves a large Latino population. Tyler Heights is slated for a revitalization. It was ranked number 2 on the MGT study, and last year it was at 133% state-rated capacity. After the redistricting, is now at 109% state-rated capacity, but in many ways, Tyler Heights is still dangerously overcrowded. I hope that when we are appropriating funds that we would take a look at the budget and see if we can move beyond revitalization to perhaps a brand new Tyler Heights building. It would send a message to the students there that the Board of Education, that everyone's behind them, and that we want to see them be in a building that's comparable to the one that's at Arnold Elementary, comparable to the one that's at West Annapolis, some of the other buildings that we've put resources in and built. So I would really encourage everyone to take a look at Tyler Heights and see if there's anything we can do. I feel like it's really waited its turn. It's been there since 1962. Last time it was remodeled was in 1970, and I'd love to see us invest in Tyler Heights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Henson.
Hello, my name is Erin Snell. Thank you for your time tonight, and thank you, Dr. Arlotto. I am a representative on the Citizens Advisory Council representing the Annapolis cluster, particularly the elementary schools. I wanted to say I was so excited to see the positions for new teachers in the budget, as well as supports for mental health. I saw that many of the counselors were subject to go to other parts of the county, and I'm sure you have good reason. I also am very excited about the Triple E program for the cluster. My one piece is in terms of the mental health supports. I know we all know how many students are in states of trauma and experiencing struggles, and thinking about the Annapolis cluster in particular, there's a lot of high poverty density. Just wanting to think about, are there other emotional supports we could be putting in the budget, other counselors to take those student counselor ratios or psychologist ratios down so that those stresses in the middle schools and also the high schools and the elementary schools could be alleviated and we could better serve our children together. Again, thank you for all that you do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Are there any other comments on the budget presentation? Okay. We will now move on to public comment. I will call up the first group: Robert Silkworth, Randy Williams, Lisa Taylor Soriero, and Erin Snell again. Just Mr. Grannon.
Just a quick question, Madam President. I feel a little uncomfortable when people make really helpful, astute observations from the public comment, and then there's a piece of information that's maybe not shared back that's responsive to it. So just a quick question for Dr. Arlotto. The board has already made a determination that Tyler Heights will get a complete revitalization, right? That determination's been made. Right.
Made that decision.
Right. Yeah, I'm not questioning. I'm just saying I get a little uncomfortable when people say things that are really meaningful and powerful, and then we can't give you the information in real time. So that determination is done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Korbelak.
Can I just add, I know Ms. Henson is one of our new city council women, and maybe we can get her on a tour of one of our beautiful revitalized schools to see what they look like, what a revitalization is compared to a complete rebuild.
If I'm not mistaken, we met for the first time at the State House when Mrs. Hummer and I were presenting several weeks ago, and you're good enough to introduce yourself, and we said we would get together, and I think we've got something on the books coming up where you're going to come over and we're going to talk about the capital budget and how that process works out. So we've begun to make some contacts, and we'll have those conversations forthcoming if I'm not mistaken. Right.
Mr. Silkworth.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. President Hummer, Vice President Gill, and other distinguished board members, Dr. Arlotta, friends. My name is Robert Silkworth, and I am here this evening as the chairperson of the High School Concerns Committee. Our December meeting, ladies and gentlemen, was held this afternoon. By the way, I would like to say before I continue that too very difficult to follow the young man from the student government. He's done a great job the last few months he's been here. And Dr. Arlotta, you did a great job also, so I'll do the best that I can. We did Thank you, sir. We did discuss many issues today, including safe schools, behavior in schools, the Anne Arundel County Strategic Plan, DC involvement in the rating process, and school work hours. And we will continue to share our information with the ASI TAC advisory meeting, which actually does meet tomorrow at 3:30. I'm going to change a little bit from what I normally do. 'Tis the season to be jolly, as the saying goes, and in that vein, I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every stakeholder in the school system for the very special moments that they have created and continue to create for our students each and every day. Most of you are familiar with the story about Ebenezer Scrooge, the story of Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. The old Scrooge was obsessed with money, yet his nephew Fred, who in my mind was one of the most important characters in the book, he made it clear that the holiday season is about special moments. A moment for caring, a moment for sharing, a moment for giving, a moment for family, a moment for friends, and of course, a moment for oneself. It took Scrooge almost a lifetime to realize that far too many moments had passed him by. But when he finally did realize this at a later age, he was smart enough to change his ways and to begin to live for the important moments in his life. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of all of the teachers that I represent to extend a very warm and caring holiday message to everyone. Best wishes to everyone. Have a safe holiday with family and friends. At the high school level, folks, I can tell you, everyone is in need of this special moment, which begins Friday after the bell rings. So, ladies and gentlemen, we invite everyone to enjoy the holiday. Get ready for 2018. We will be back, Dr. Arlotta, ready to collaborate, and teachers they will continue to create special moments in the lives of our students and their families, just as the students create special moments for us each and every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silkworth. Merry Christmas.
You did great.
I tried, Dr. Arlotta.
You wanted me to go next? Okay. Hi, my name's Lisa Taylor Serrero. You guys all know me. I've been here a million times, I feel like. I'm from Shadyside, and as you know, I'm adamantly opposed to the cell tower that is proposed to be built at Shadyside. And actually, I'm opposed to the milestone lease agreement that would allow cell towers to be built on all of our county schools. I feel like you guys kind of think that those opposed are alarmist or kind of paranoid. And I wanted to kind of put myself, I'm really nervous, sorry. I wanted to put myself out there and just really let you know that I'm not that kind of person. I'm not like a tinfoil hat wearing freak kind of person. I let my kid eat stuff with red dye 40 or whatever number you're not supposed to eat. I mean, I'm not like that. But I really feel like this is something that's just wrong. And so I just wanted to kind of let you know that I'm not alone. If you really think that I'm one of the alarmists, I mean, I'm with the American Academy of Pediatrics, someone who I really think that since we're teaching children here and talking about children, we should be listening to their advice. The Maryland Government Agency, CPAC, that's the Children's Environmental Health and Advisory Council, recommends lowering Wi-Fi exposure, which is the same radiation that's coming off of this tower. I don't let my son use a cell phone. I put it on airplane mode when I go to bed since I found out that this stuff is dangerous. Kaiser Permanente, Autism One, the Environmental Health Trust, Mercola, thousands of doctors and scientists. I mean, they must be paranoid as well. I don't feel like it's being treated seriously. I know there's studies that say it's safe, and I know that there's studies that say it's not. And I wanted to share this with you. 70% of non-industry funded studies say that it's not. So, I mean, that's something to really consider. Think about who you're getting your information from. I wanted to also talk about the money that's coming in from it. It's so minuscule that it's just not worth it. I have cell phone tower statistics here. I wanted to share this with you. Maryland is one of the states with the highest tower lease rates. Maryland lease rates go from $121,000 on average to $489,000. So that's the range. We're getting 25.
Thank you, Ms. Soriaro.
How can I read this?
Yeah, right there.
Hi, I'm Randy Williams. I'm one of the visitors from Shadyside, Maryland. I am a registered nurse, as you all know. And I just wanted to start out and say there is no equitable amount of money that should be as an expense for the health and safety of our children and our students. So I really think that that should be considered when you look at the amount of money that is being brought in from cell towers and the health and safety of our children in what is known and what is not known. The study I wanted to talk to you about today is rather scary. I read it just last week, and it was a study that was published on December 13th. And the study shows a direct link between the electromagnetic frequency radiation and the risk of miscarriage. So I really think you all should read it. I prepared it in my daughter's science notebook and copied it for you. This showed, the study was done at Kaiser Permanente with 913 pregnant women. It was a objective study where they actually put a meter that measures radiation on the women's bellies or bodies and asked them to just perform a typical day. And they found that there was a 2.72 times increase in the rate of miscarriage amongst the women with the highest level of radiation. So the lowest rate they had was about 10.1% of lost babies. The other women were losing babies at a rate as high as, I believe it was 24%. Please look at the numbers. This was a recent study done a couple of years ago, and it was just published. So we have to look at our teachers' safety in our schools and in this county. And if one teacher is exposed to this level of radiation and loses a baby, but she works at another school and that school does not have a cell tower, she's not going to want to work at the school where she might lose her child. So I just would like you to please look at the statistics and look at the studies. They exist and they are real. Science is real, and it's evidence-based and science-based for these vulnerable women and children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Hello. My name is Erin Snell again, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Hillsmere Elementary School PTA. I have 3 children. One is at Hillsmere, and the other 2 are still at home, but I think about their safety a lot, and I know that you all do too, as the Board of Education and our superintendent. Recently, Hillsmere Elementary, mine is tied to these women here. Recently, Hillsmere Elementary School, I know that there was an easement to allow a mini cell tower to be put in, and I honestly had no background on this and learned about it and thought, let me study this a little bit more. And I ended up speaking with somebody at the National Institute of Environmental Health and Science, which is part of the Health and Human Services Department of our federal government, as well as the National Institutes of Health. And he said they had a new study coming out that would talk about this, and that's the one that was just referred to. So basically this study is saying that there are, and I really recommend you check it out because I was just trying to read it on my way right before coming, but there do seem to be some correlations between non-ionizing radiation, which is different. They haven't been able to prove that consistently before, but there do seem to be some new risks associated with cell phones and the non-ionized radiation. So my concern and my ask is just that we do, as a school system, develop a new policy about putting our vulnerable students and staff near this technology that we just don't fully understand yet. As we know, the studies say this and say that, and when I talked to this representative who is sort of one of the head people here, he said to me, the research has shown us that we need to do more research, and that was before this study came out. So I just ask that you reconsider, or you consider making a new policy about these cell phone towers, the large ones in particular, but also the minis. I know that there is an obligation to increase infrastructure for us, especially in times of crisis, and having cell phone towers is very important, but it does seem that there could be some other locations that could be considered that aren't so close to so many kids. So I was thinking about it, and my kids are going to spend now, they have the cell phone tower at their elementary school, there's a big cell phone tower at their middle school, Annapolis Middle, and a big cell phone tower at their high school. They're going to spend 8 hours a day, or however many hours a day, for their entire childhood and young adulthood next door, literally next door to these towers, and that scares me, especially since the research is leaning towards there being some negative impact on our bodies. Thank you for your consideration and all that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Next is Patricia Laird, Shanika Henson, and Holly Kleiderline.
Now I can roll a presentation. Okay. I wrote a whole thing out here. And since I only have 3 minutes, I'm going to try and not read directly from it. I'm going to just kind of look it over. I'm from Arundel High School, and this is my daughter, who's going to be graduating this coming year. I wanted to show you a couple little items here that I brought. This is a frame I purchased 4 of, and I'll explain to you why I'm showing you these. Gave them out to my family because my daughter's graduating. And we also purchased additional pictures. You love the cap and gown. Everyone, I don't know if all of you are aware, but I know Mr. Arlotto is. I sent him an email. I sent several of you as well. There is a gown change that is taking place this year. I have no problem with a gown change. I'm all for it. I'm great with the idea of it. Inclusivity is great. This school, I think the inclusiveness has been wonderful. My daughter's on GSA, which is the Gay Straight Alliance. I don't have a problem with gown change. I do have a problem with the principal telling us mid-year that she's doing a gown change. I brought these items because I spent nearly $600 on getting my daughter's pictures done. That didn't include hair and makeup and all the things you do as a parent to make that day special, and have this on your wall for years. And my parents, which I purchased these for, the principal took no consideration. She did not tell anybody that this was going to happen. She did not talk to the student body. She just announced it, that she was going to change the gown color. Again, I have no problem with changing the gown. I do have a problem with parents investing money in buying pictures and their child, and no one taking that into consideration. I know that seems small and minute, but for me in particular, I know my picture is still on my wall of my mother's house and my grandmother's house 25 years later. I intend to have the same, with my daughter getting her diploma right next to it. I'm very upset that no one seems to be recognizing that there are several parents concerned about the situation. For me to do the change just for the cap and gown through the picture company, the total cost for me will be $625 for me to get my daughter's hair and nails done and get the pictures done, remade the same way. If only a quarter of the children's parents decide to do the same thing, that will come to around $78,000. $78,000. We have over 500 students. 3/4 of the students are female. So if you look at that, she took no consideration. She didn't put out a vote. There was also a student poll, which was put out on Twitter. 82% of the students were against this. This was not, sorry.
Would you do me a favor and share the rest of that information with Dr. Kubik, who oversees Office of School Performance in the schools? Would you chat with her for a minute, please?
I sure will.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Laird.
Good evening, President Hummer, Vice President Gilliland, Dr. Alato, and board members. My name is Holly Kleiderlein, and I'm the school counselor for 699 students at Oak Hill Elementary School. Almost there. You've heard me speak about the difficulty in providing a comprehensive and effective school counseling program to a caseload that high. After last month's meeting, I had several parents ask me what they could do to help. I explained to them, as I am to you tonight, that I am a lone representative of this caseload issue. There are 21 other school counselors who could be here tonight talking to you about working with over 600 students. 9 of those counselors have more than 700, and 3 have over 800. I've provided you a bar graph to illustrate the magnitude of this problem. On the left is the American School Counselor Association's recommendation of a student-to-counselor ratio of 250 to 1. The national average from 2014-15 is 482 to 1. The average in Maryland that same year was 369 to 1. The average for elementary schools in our county this year is 488 to 1. You can understand my anger then when the money for 3.4 elementary school counseling positions was cut last year, but money was spent to move school start times back 15 minutes to improve students' mental health. Studies may show that later start times are important, but I think professionals trained extensively in students' mental health would have been a more measurable and lasting impact. Now let me share with you what's on the horizon. About 1,300 single-family homes with no age restrictions are ready to be built at the Two Rivers development in Odenton because the zoning has changed. I don't see construction on a new school, but I do see plenty of sold lots. Which school should those children attend? Crofton Meadows at 770 or Crofton Woods at 745, perhaps Piney Orchard at 639. Then there's Solly Elementary with 836 students. A new 6-classroom addition is being built to ease overcrowding. That means you're willing to have an elementary school larger than several middle schools and a ratio of 900 students for 1 counselor. The state legislature last year passed 3 bills that are impacted by school counselor caseloads. One is the Start Talking Maryland Act, which mandates that all students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th learn information about the dangers of heroin and other opioids. At the elementary level, they are taught by school counselors. Start Talking Maryland covers a tough topic, but then so does Aaron's Law, which mandates all schools implement a prevention-oriented child sexual abuse program. For a school with 700 students, that's 28 lessons across grade levels for school counselors, for a single school counselor. I have absolutely no problem teaching this subject matter. What bothers me is the 3rd law, named Lauren's Law, to address a perceived need to increase school counselor awareness and skills in recognizing indicators of mental illness and behavior distress, including depression, trauma, violence, youth suicide, and substance abuse. More training for school counselors is not what students need. They need more school counselors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kleiderlein. And Ms. Kleiderlein, thank you for being such a continuous and persistent advocate for counselors and for your kids.
Thank you.
It's noticed.
Thank you.
Ms. Henson, do you want to speak again, or? Okay, I just want to make sure. All right. All right. Next are consent items and. Oh yes, I'm sorry. If you anyone else that would like to speak.
Good evening. Thank you, President Hummer. Dr. Alato, President Hummer, thank you. I'm sorry I was not able to see your budget presentation. My name is Janet Norman. I'm an Annapolis High parent. I had the pleasure of shaking Dr. Alato's hand as the 2016 Annapolis High PTA Volunteer of the Year, and I serve on a number of local committees, Annapolis Education Commission and others, but I'm speaking for myself tonight. But I just wanted to let you know I try to be one of the biggest advocates I can be for our Annapolis cluster schools and our schools throughout the county, because I know it's so important that we fund them adequately and we have the resources our kids need. One thing I'd like to ask you to remember is that our service members are away from home this holiday season, and while we all gather around with our families and friends and have a good, nice, relaxing break, they're serving in very hard-scrabble places that they don't necessarily want to be, but they're doing that for us. And so I want you to remember what we can do for them. The principals, staff, and parents of Mead Heights Elementary came to you last year and asked you to solve the completely inappropriate start times for Mead Heights Elementary at 9:40 a.m. when their kids get up and go into military daycare at 6 a.m. Those elementary students have to wait 3 hours and 40 minutes before they can start elementary school. So I ask you to do everything you can within the budget that you are revising from Dr. Alato's proposals to move elementary start times to more appropriate times, to improve the transportation system. Ms. Hummer got to sit next to a Marine Corps officer mom at the Annapolis High Coffee who had just moved here from Japan, and her son was missing the bus that was coming 20 minutes too early for an incredibly already early start time. So please do everything you can to fix the transportation problems. Consider what help you need. Use the University of Maryland's expertise as other states are using MIT and things across the country. Our kids are competing for slots in colleges and our military institutions on an unequal footing of advantage that the sleep-rested kids across the country are getting. So please consider all those needs in the budget as you make your revisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Norman. Are there any other public comments? Okay. Next are consent items. Do I have a motion to bundle items 5.01 through 5.08?
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes,
oh, wait,
ma'am.
I'm sorry. I have to make a motion to move these from information to action.
So moved.
A second. Was bundling it moving it to information action, or just bundling it?
Call it just in case.
Just in case, we'll have that. So,
Be on the safe side.
all those in favor of moving from information to action? All right. So now, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation, please.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the Board of Education approve contracts as listed on today's agenda, 5.01 through 5.08.
Okay. So, all right. Mr. Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question on item number 5.03, award of contract for student transportation services. So as I was reading through the documents we were provided, this contract is for a 7-year period, or a 7-year term, excuse me. With the new high school scheduled to open Crofton High in 2020 and the proposed Old Mill Highs to be open, if I remember correctly, by 2025, is there an opportunity to reopen or renegotiate this contract?
For the record, Alec Chaknovich, Chief Operating Officer. The answer to that is absolutely yes. Essentially, the bus contracts are a combination of the capitalization cost, the fuel costs, and the hourly pay rate of the driver. We know what those facts and figures are. Once the redistricting actions are finalized, we'll approach the contractors to renegotiate those routes and apply a change order to make those adjustments, either upwards or downwards, depending on what the math dictates. If we are not able to reach acceptable terms, certainly we have the opportunity, more than the opportunity, we have the ability to terminate the contract and rebid them at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
And I have a question on 5.08 for the school buses. Are these buses that will be used for our non-public transportation to our non-public schools?
So it'll be a combination. These are the lift buses that service primarily our 3 centers,
Okay.
the Ruth Easton, Marley Glen, and Central Special. Okay. But yes, they also do support some of our non-public transports if the youngster requires the assistance of a wheelchair capable piece of equipment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any further questions? So all those in favor to approve these items? All right. Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Item 6.01 is an action item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Reinhardt.
With regards to Ms. Joseph's promotion, I would just like to give a hearty hail to Pitt.
Are there any other board questions or comments? So, all those in favor? All right, motion passes. All right. Okay, item 6.02 is the board handbook revisions. The Board of Education handbook has been developed by the board to identify the operating procedures and governing guidepost of the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County. It serves as a resource for members of the board as they assume their offices and acquit their responsibilities. The handbook is posted on the board's website and updated annually as appropriate, with limited print copies available for distribution. So there are a number of revisions for the board to adopt today. I will summarize each proposed revision and ask for any questions from the board on each one. Once I have read all the summaries for the proposed revisions, I will ask for any amendments by board members. If a board member would like to offer an amendment on any revisions, they may be offered at that time. Any motion would require a second, be open to board and public comment, and then subject to subsequent action by the board. After any amendments are voted on by the board will consider the revised version of the handbook as a whole. So again, I will read summarize each proposed revision and then take questions from the board on each of them. Number 1 on page 2 is to revise the introduction to add a list of definitions of specific terms in the handbook, including conference, hearing, meeting, retreat, session, and workshop. Are there any board questions? Okay. Number 2 on pages 4 to 5 is to revise the composition of the board and board member qualifications based on the recent changes to Maryland law. Are there any questions? Number 3 at page 5 to revise the student board member to reflect changes in the scholarship amount as reflected in the new Maryland law. Any questions? Number 4, page 6 is to revise the authority of individual board members to clarify public appearances. Are there any questions? Okay. Number 5, page 7, to revise removal of the board member. This is also pursuant to changes in the Maryland state law. Any questions? Number 6, page 7, to revise the duties of board officers. Any questions? Number 7, page 8, to revise the board committees. Any questions on this one? Number 8, page 10, to revise board member visits as follows. This is to clarify this and also to change the heading to board member engagement. Are there any questions? Number 9, page 10, to revise board member compensation expenses and equipment procedures and guidelines. This also reflects the changes in state law. Any questions? Number 10, page 11, to revise board member compensation expenses and equipment procedures and guidelines as per changes in state law regarding the student member. Any questions? Number 11, page 12, to revise school board memberships and service on MABE committees. Any questions? Number 12, page 14, to revise graduation ceremonies. Any questions? Number 13, page 14, to revise board attendance at conferences and professional development. Any questions? Number 14, page 15, to omit the section entitled Board Attendance at Community Events, as this language is now incorporated under Board Member Engagement. Any questions? Number 15, page 16, to revise board norms to enhance communication expectations. Any questions? Number 16, page 21, to revise regular business meetings. Any questions? And number 17, to revise the board handbook to include stylistic changes throughout the document, including additional language for clarification, language changes, and punctuation changes. Any questions? Okay, now at this time, I will ask for any amendments by board members. Anyone have any amendments? All right. So, I'm sorry, Mr. Grana.
Item number 1, page 2, under meeting, in the second paragraph, where it says sessions, open hearings, retreats, and workshops all fall under the definition of a meeting. I move to add the phrase, for purposes of the Open Meetings Act, to the end of the sentence. And the reason for that proposal is, after conferring with the board's legal counsel, Darren Burns, if you look further on in the revisions that reflect the statutory grounds for removal, the legislature, when it passed the new law, increased the threshold for board attendance to 75%, meaning falling under that threshold would be a grounds for removal. If you look at the other provisions in the statute, they're all for quite severe offenses, misconduct, and the like. Again, after conferral with the board's legal counsel, it cannot possibly be the legislature's intention to raise that threshold to 75 and then simultaneously increase the or expand the application of that threshold to scores of additional meetings per year for things like workshops and retreats. That's just not what the legislature intended. And if the board attempted to remove someone for that basis, it seems pretty likely that it would fail in court. So just to make it abundantly clear, after conferring with other board members, if we were to add the language that I suggest for purposes of the Open Meetings Act to that provision, we would avoid that ambiguity.
Is there a second to Mr. Grannon's amendment?
I would just have a point of order.
Okay, point of order, Mr. Grannon.
And that is, just so I'm understanding, when we meet, and I guess who's out here? Darren's, okay. Whether Mr. Bennett or Mr. Burns would be available, we're always governed by the Open Meetings Act, regardless of the type of meeting that the board engages in business, whether it's a retreat, whether it's a workshop, etc. Even though we may not be taking a formal vote, there is provisions of the Open Meetings Act that we must adhere to, which is certainly separate than potentially 5 of us attending a graduation or whatever. So I'm trying to get clarity on. certainly a graduation is not something that's governed by an Open Meetings Act because we're not there to conduct business, whereas we would be at a workshop or a retreat.
There are going to be times when, if 5 board members go to a baseball game together, as long as you're not there and transacting business, you're not subject to the Open Meetings Act. But generally speaking, whenever a public agency, a public organization such as a Board of Education, gets together and has a quorum, you are covered by the Open Meetings Act. But there are those exceptions, and the most common is getting together for familial or friendly activities. Somebody wants to go to the beach, and so 5 of you go to the beach, or you go to a baseball game or something like that. As long as you're not talking about business, there's no violation of the Open Meetings Act.
So then, I guess for clarity, just reserving the point of order, for clarity, then what Mr. Grannon is suggesting by his motion, and I'm sorry, I literally was in the back and came out, so I'm just trying to understand. What you're suggesting, those meetings would still be covered under the guidelines of the Open Meetings Act, correct?
I think I could respond to your question since you've raised it as a point of information. And if the sentence as it's read, yes. Sessions, open hearings, retreats, and workshops all fall under the definition of a meeting, my additional language, for purposes of the Open Meetings Act, it doesn't change which meetings the Open Meetings Act applies to. And according to what Mr. Bennett said, that's still an accurate description. What it does is it makes it clear that this definition of a meeting is not the definition of the meeting in the statute on which the 75% threshold is based.
So let me ask a point of clarification too. So you're wanting to add the language for purposes of the Open Meetings Act, but your intent from that is to say that these all wouldn't necessarily fall under the definition of a meeting for the 75% attendance threshold. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that it doesn't. It's just to make that not ambiguous.
Okay. All right.
If I could suggest, I hesitate to jump into this, but perhaps what at some point the board may want to do is to look again at the topic as opposed to trying to take a sentence apart. Because without trying to sound like Old Man River, I was on the board back in the 70s, and I've been around the board ever since. And as long as I can remember, and Ms. Nally hasn't been on the board nearly that long ago, but as a senior board member, a veteran board member, I think she would probably agree that over time, board members have always talked about activities that they did, and I'm using the word activities specifically instead of meetings, hearings, whatever the sessions may be, in terms of an expectation that for certain kinds of activities, whether you want to call them meetings or sessions or whatever you want to call them, the expectation is that board members will participate in them. And so no matter what you call them, there has always been, as long ago as 40 years ago, there has always been an expectation that board members will participate with their colleagues on the board in doing certain activities.
So, Mr. Bennett, let me ask you a point for clarification. So, Mr. Grannon has proposed an amendment on this. If we want to further discuss this amendment about meetings, we had a point of order, but if we want to further discuss this, someone would need to second this so that we could have the discussion on the amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So, do I have a second on Mr. Grannon's amendment?
I'll second it so we can have the discussion.
Okay. Ms. Korbelak seconds the motion. Okay. Ms. Sasso.
It is my understanding, and maybe since I'm a foreigner, let's put it that way, a meeting is when people meet, and in any of these things over here, session, the open hearings, the retreats, and the workshops, usually there is at least 5 of us there. Isn't that a board meeting when 5 of us meet? It's a quorum in which
when 5 of you meet for the transaction of business.
meet. That's the word. It's a meeting.
If the 5 of you go to the beach together,
No. We're not
and you
discussing
take your children and grandchildren, that's not a meeting. But if 5 or more of you get together for the purpose of transacting or talking about business or board business, that's a meeting.
Yeah. It's just that this is a point that basically being on the board only 2 years for the public and for everybody, if you only come to the board meetings sitting here, you're really not a person that is prepared to be able to discuss what is necessary for this board. And when all of this was being put together, and I've only been here 2 years, basically it is through the workshops, it is basically through the retreats, and the other things that we meet as a group of 5 or more, that we basically get to understand what is our role and what is our responsibility on this board. Otherwise, we are here just to take up space.
Ms. Korbelak.
I served on the Handbook Committee, and I just wanted to offer some insight to how we came to list those things as meetings. The Open Meetings Act that was revised June of 2017 specifically says the act defines the verb to meet as to convene a quorum of a public body to consider or transact public business. So a public body's gathering will be a meeting under the act if 3 elements are met. A quorum of its members is present, the gathering is convened for the consideration or transaction of public business, and when the gathering occurred by chance or social reasons, the quorum nonetheless was used to discuss public business. So if we did go to the beach with our grandchildren and talked about business, it's still an open meeting. So we looked at the definition of a meeting under the Open Meetings Act and listed those things in the board handbook because we felt that they met the definition of the meeting under the Open Meetings Act. That's just how we came to list those things in the handbook.
And for whatever it's worth, Madam President, again, at the risk of showing my age, over the years, various words have been used to describe board members getting together, even 5 or more, a quorum of board members getting together. But as long as it has to do with talking about board business, if you've got a quorum, it's a meeting.
Mr. Grannon.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear to all the other board members, the source of my suggestion for adding that clarification for purposes of the Open Meetings Act is from dialogue with Ms. Korbelak and understanding how this language came to be. So I guess, I'm an attorney. I understand how statutes and guidelines work. Guidelines cannot change the meaning of a statute. That's not how it works. I'm quite confident that no court will read the 75% removal language applying to scheduled meetings of the board to apply to all of these other things. It's just a point of shouldn't our language be as clear as possible.
Let's hope that's never challenged and we never have to find out.
That's why you write guidelines, to avoid those kinds of things.
Well, I would just say that this handbook is a document that's created by the board to put forth our expectations for other board members, and it reflects the expectations of the board at the time. It can be revised as things go along. It's not a legal document, but the consensus among the board committee and with other members as over time, as we've talked about this, is that, as Ms. Sasso said, all of these things that we have listed as meetings are crucial to being an active, prepared board member to do the work of the board. We included the language that this is all part of the master calendar of meetings in the spring, which determines the schedule, and so we vote on this a year in advance so that people have the dates and the calendars on there so that we have there. And I believe that this is a reflection of what the board believes are considered meetings that are crucial to the work of the board. If at some time there is a member who falls below the 75% threshold and they are recommended to be removed from the board for this, they can certainly at that time in their appeal argue with the state superintendent about that, and perhaps that we will be ruled against. But I think that this reflects what the board priorities are and what the board feels are needed, again, to be a vital board member. Ms. Sasso.
Is there any way that in order to make it more precise, concise, and make it a must, can we change the words from now on? Instead of calling it sessions, open hearings, retreats, workshops, can we call them all meetings?
That's, just to clarify, that's what we've done. We've said that a meeting, so all of these things fall under the term meeting. So if we call it if we say we have a board retreat plan, that is a meeting. They're all kind of, they fall under the term. That's why these definitions are here. So it falls under there to say that we believe that all of these things constitute a meeting of the board.
But Ms. Sasso, if you're asking if the board could say, for example, in a notice, we are having a meeting at which time we're going to discuss
it will be a retreat.
If scheduling a retreat or something like that.
Always call it a meeting.
You could do that.
Okay. Okay. That solves the problem of what is a meeting and what is not. We don't call it a session.
Ms. Nally.
As the original author of the handbook, back in some years ago, I did this as my leadership project. And George Margulies, who was attorney for Dr. Maxwell at the time, and Molly and I worked really hard gathering handbooks from all over the state. Anne Arundel County did not have one. So the first issue of this was written, discussed, talked about. We really did. We worked very hard. Molly worked hard. Mr. Margulies, we all worked hard, and we came up with our first. It's been revised many times. But may I say, in my almost 11 years on this board, it has been a consensus that attending meetings is extremely important. Not just the 2 meetings, workshops. I mean, I can remember when I was president of the board talking everybody into going to a 3-night overnight camping retreat with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Aren't you sorry you missed that? Amy went, but we gained so much from that experience. It was not didn't we, Ms. Brandenburg? We did. She was happy she went. And anyway, but I'm just saying that this board feels, at least I can't speak for it, but from the beginning of this handbook to now, I don't anticipate anybody ever falling under 75%, because if you're a serious member of this board, you are going to want to be engaged and involved in these activities. That's my opinion.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. You're a hard act to follow. I think I
can plan another retreat.
I can see having a good time around the campfire with you.
We worked.
I think I now have the source of my confusion, and just to clarify, I was getting some clarity from President Hummer. When I was seeing the last sentence of some of these paragraphs, no official business of the board is conducted at conferences, I was using business in more general terms, and as Mrs. Hummer just clarified for me, that that's actually stipulated by Robert's Rules of Order to mean business in that sense as a vote. So I think that was really the source of my confusion when I was thinking we are conducting business, because it is a business act of this board to be at those functions, but business in this terminology or phraseology specifically means no official vote is being taken. So that, again, that helps me to better understand the intent here. So thank you.
Ms. Corbett.
I'm just wondering if it would offer clarity in the first sentence under the definition of meeting to, instead of saying a meeting is any official scheduled convening of members of the board, use the definition of meeting from the Open Meetings Act. Would that be helpful? I can make a motion to, but we have to, on the.
We have to vote on the outstanding amendment first, and then another amendment could be made. So, are there any other comments or questions on Mr. Grannon's amendment to add the phrase "for the purposes of the Open Meetings Act" to the Senate sessions, open hearings, retreats, and workshops all under the definition of a meeting for the purposes of the Open Meetings Act? So, all those in favor of this amendment? All those opposed? Okay, motion fails. Ms. Korbelak.
I would like to propose an amendment to the definition of meeting on page 1 of the document, so that the first sentence would read, a meeting is, and then the three things from the Open Meetings Act. 1, a quorum of its members is present. The gathering is convened for the consideration or transaction of public business. And when the gathering occurred by chance or social reasons, the quorum nonetheless was used to discuss public business.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay. Mr. Bennett, I'm sorry, I'm going to call you up and ask you another question.
That was predictable when I said
I'm sorry. As soon as you sat down, that would come. Do you believe that this definition of Open Meetings Act encompasses what had been said about meetings on this?
It can be interpreted that way, yes. Okay. And the reason I'm hedging is because I'm a lawyer. But if given that there is or has been some disagreement among all of the board members about what a meeting is intended, what the word meeting is intended to mean, then frankly, the more you try to clarify that, I think the better off you are. I mean, instead of just saying, well, let's look at the Open Meetings Act. My guess would be, and I could be wrong, my guess would be that very few of you have the Open Meetings Act in front of you tonight. If what you might do is you might defer voting on this until you have a chance to read the Open Meetings Act and go back and look at other sources, go online and look for definition of meeting. I have, and I've noticed that meeting is used in a different context in a variety of locations. You simply, in my opinion, this board simply needs to decide, what do you want meetings to mean? And if you're clear and you have a majority on what the word meeting should mean in this context, then maybe what you need to do is give it a definition. Meeting means X. I mean, as opposed to saying meeting means what meeting means in the Open Meetings Act, because that may not work all the time for you.
Mr. Grannon.
I have a follow-up question for Mr. Bennett. How long have you advised the board on legal matters?
Since 1983.
How long have you generally practiced in the area of what I would call education law?
Since, well, I was on the board before I became the board's attorney. So if you count when I was on the board, the late 70s would be about a starting time.
Okay. Are you familiar with the change that the legislature made to the laws governing board membership and the like in this past session?
Yes, I try to stay up on that.
Okay. And are you familiar with the legislature's increase of the threshold for attendance and removal of board members to 75%?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. In your professional opinion, when the legislature made that increase from 50% to 75%, do you think the legislature had in mind to include now changing the denominator from whatever the regular number of scheduled meetings of the board is to also include open hearings, retreats, workshops, and the like that could increase that number to, I don't know, 60 a year? Do you think they meant to do that when they increased the threshold to 75?
I am almost certain that they intended to include board workshops because those are meetings. Those are times when the membership has to get together to go to a workshop to all learn the same information that's being conveyed. The word session is almost used interchangeably in Robert's rules with the word meeting. So session and meeting, as I say, are used interchangeably in Robert's rules. So did the General Assembly mean sessions when they said meetings? It depends on probably it would be, having worked at the legislature, I can tell you somebody down there has documents that show what happened during the discussions, what was the original bill, what did the original bill say, was it different from the one that was passed, what were the discussions in committee that discussed that. All of those things, again, if it's the kind of thing that one wants to dig deeply enough, those are the places that you would look to try to find out, what did the legislature mean?
And why would it be that the legislature would make a substantial numerical increase going from 50 to 75% at the same time as expanding the application of that threshold without making any kind of comment or anything like that in the legislative history, or making anything a little bit more clear what they would have intended?
I don't mean to sound humorous in this, because I don't feel that way, but having worked at the General Assembly for a number of years, I can tell you that trying to figure out what the legislature intended is not the easiest thing in the world. It is helpful when a discussion or a group of discussions went through a committee, and the committee kept the legislative committee, and the committee staff kept good notes. But I haven't seen any committee notes from this discussion. I haven't looked for them, but there may or may not be notes which would reveal the discussion that went on, what the vote was in committee. It clearly, there was a positive vote because it was voted out to the floor. But I haven't taken the time to go back and try to dig up those records from the General Assembly.
And my last question is, the third part of the amendment that Ms. Korbelak just offered to basically transplant the definition of meeting from the Open Meetings Act also includes basically ad hoc meetings where any 5 members of the board are present, correct? That was the third one? Right, so the third one says, when the gathering occurred by chance or social reasons, the quorum nonetheless used it to discuss public business. So let's juxtapose that with the language in the removal provision, which says 75% of the scheduled meetings of the county board. So in your professional opinion, the definition that's used in the removal provision, 75% of the scheduled meetings of the county board can faithfully be read to include when the gathering occurred by chance or social reasons? Does that make sense to you, sir?
I would be uncomfortable with trying to analogize one with the other, specifically when it says chance encounters or those kinds of the terminologies.
I think Mr. Grennan did raise a point that could be problematic if we said chance encounters. I believe that the definitions that we have here for meeting, which is something that we worked on for a long time in consultation with Mr. Bennett to come up with this, to me, this reflects what our board believes is a meeting and what is important. So I would oppose Ms. Korbelak's amendment because I think what we have here is clarified enough. But yeah, Mr. Reinhardt.
Call to question, please.
Yes. the question, the call to question is for the amendment to change the definition, the first line of the definition of meeting to the definition from the Open Meetings Act.
And Madam Chairman, you'll need a second for that.
No, we already had a second.
You'll need us to end debate.
Oh,
You'll need
to
a
end
second
debate.
to
I'm
end
sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, we have a second on that. And so the amendment is to change the definition of meeting, the first part of definition of meeting, to the definition of the Open Meetings Act. Ms. Corbett.
I just wanted to say that this definition sheet is defining what a meeting is. The law that was put into place specifically says it has to be a scheduled meeting. So the third item in the Open Meetings Act wouldn't apply because it wouldn't have been scheduled in terms of terminating someone off the board.
So all those in favor of Ms. Korbelak's amendment to add the definition of Open Meetings Act? Okay. 3, 4. Okay. All those opposed? Okay. Mr. Grannon, I couldn't see how you...
I'll abstain on that.
You'll abstain?
I'll abstain. Yeah.
Okay. So there's not a quorum on the vote, so the motion fails.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Don't go far. I don't know if we have. All right. So are there any other amendments to the revisions? Mr. Grannon.
I'll defer since I went first, I'll defer if anybody else wants to offer anything else. If not, then my next one is on number 6, page 7. There's one new sentence added there that says the president, with input from board members, determines seating on the dais. And my amendment would be just to simply delete that sentence. And the reason for that is it has nothing to do with the current composition of the board or the current board officers. It has to do with the fact that this is going to become a popularly elected body. And I've actually never seen anything with regard to any kind of public body where the president of the body can simply move other people around, especially since on this board, the president should basically be a first amongst equals. And to leave that to someone's discretion, especially when it could be for some partisan purpose, especially as the board becomes a popularly elected body, I think could lead to some mischief. So I'll just give an example. The Chief Justice of the United States of America does not have the power to move the other 8 justices around on the dais at the Supreme Court. So I think it would be odd to vest the president of this board with greater authority than the Chief Justice of the United States. That's the reason for
Okay.
my proposed amendment.
Is there a second to the amendment to delete the sentence, the president with input from board members determines seating on the dais?
Mm-hmm.
Ma'am.
When, or at least I remember this year, so that you know, when we were all rerouted or reseated or whatever you want to call it, you know, I looked at it as to the fact the president asked, I think it was Stacy at that moment, you know, and you asked, where would everybody like to sit? Except, you know, there is where the president sits and where the vice president sits and where the student sits. You know, and I was asking, I said, I would gladly stay here. You know, and I made a comment to her today. It's really funny, but, you know, we have 2 minorities holding everybody else in. You know, so, but the whole thing is, you know, we are basically seated, if you look at it, you know, opposite parties, you know, together according to race, you know, color. I mean, we are basically distributed, and according to male, female, it's just, you know, looking at it, it's, I would say it's just common sense, you know, and hopefully whosoever becomes the president in the future, even though it might be a political appointment or elected or whatever it is will have common sense that you don't sit all the Republicans together and all of the men together and all of the women together. You know, it's just, and hopefully the president will be the one who knows most of the board, you know, that can lead the people to basically accomplish something. So I don't.
But we can't discuss this one anymore unless someone seconds Mr. Grannon's amendment. Is there a second? There is no second. The motion fails. Are there any other amendments or comments on Mr. Gilliland?
Thank you, Madam President. No amendment. I think I just wanted to make more of a general comment about this. And I think Mr. Grannon summarized very well earlier that this document has no legal authority, that, you know, and I don't want to use your words or twist your words, but I think you were referencing the removal aspect that's in the statute. And I do believe, you know, that they are different. But having said that, I think what we've seen, you know, over the last, I guess maybe 2 years, post our appointments, but you know, some of the discussions that the appointments, the SBAC now has had with certain candidates. I think it was the one, you know, and forgive me for just mentioning his name, but you know, during the appointment of Mr. Reinhardt. When there were about 23, 24 applicants at that time, I think it's fair to say that there were a few who had absolutely no idea what this body does. And my hope is that potential members, whether they're, you know, potential members seeking appointment until this board transitions to an elected board, and then hopefully members who are members of the community who would like to seek this board seat as an elected member would at least refer to this handbook to see what it is that we do. And I've said this, you know, in community meetings when I've been asked, you know, what is it that the Board of Education does beyond sitting here? And I say that we are the only entity that sits in an executive function, that sits in a legislative function, and sits in a judicial function, depending on what we're doing at a given point in time. And I think that this handbook does provide good counsel, good best practices to those who hope to be here, because you know the reality is, you know, what we do here twice a month for a couple of hours, give or take. I don't know the percentage of what that is to our job offhand, but it's just a very small percentage of that which we do. And I think it was Mrs. Sasso who also said very eloquently, I can never say things better than you do, but you know, the fact that we've got to be doing some of the other things that you've referenced in order to do our job here at the dais in a much better capacity. And I do think whether it's a workshop, a retreat, a budget hearing to get community input, which I think is probably the most critical function that we serve before making a decision, it all goes together. And, you know, it's that cohesiveness of all of that I think makes better informed decisions that affect the lives right now of 82,000 young people and 10,000 plus employees. So for that reason, you know, I do support the handbook, even though it has no valid legal authority.
Are there any public comments on the board handbook revisions? So, all right. All those in favor of passing the board handbook revisions, item 6.02? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-1. Item 6.03 is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move from information to action? Second. All those in favor? Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approve the Crofton Area High School deed of easement.
All right. Are there any board questions or comments on the Crofton Area High School deed of easement? Is there any public comment? Okay, all those in favor? All right, motion passes 8-0. Item 6.04 is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? Second. All those in favor? Okay. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approve the second quarter operating budget supplemental and fund transfer for FY 2018 to be submitted to the County Council.
Okay. And we have a presentation.
Yes, ma'am. It will be a brief one. Please introduce yourselves again. Alex Shaknovich, Chief Operating Officer.
Matt Stansky, Director of Financial Operations.
So this is a customary action that we bring before the board at this time each and every year, and it essentially has two principal functions. The first one being that we operate on an appropriation-based budget, and after the original budget is struck and becomes effective July 1, any additional revenue that we receive by way of grants or any other sources, et cetera, we do not have the appropriation authority to access and expend. So we have to, in order to be able to do that, it has to be recognized officially and go via a bill to be introduced by the county executive before the county council to give us the authority to utilize and expend those funds. The second piece is it allows us to transfer dollars in and amongst categories, and this year the transfer is significantly larger than this board has likely been accustomed to seeing over the course of the past couple of years, and it's principally attributed to the healthcare rescue plan that was structured last year. If the board can harken back to last spring, remember that we partnered with the Anne Arundel County government and our employee groups, as well as garnered the approval of the state of Maryland to structure a package that would allow us to, over the course of 3 years, be able to put our healthcare plan on sounder footing. Part and parcel with that, we agreed at that time that one of our obligations was to scrub our budgets and in the course of the last fiscal year amass a quantity of money that could be transferred into the self-insurance fund, specifically the fixed charges category by state definition. When we brought our end-of-year closeout report to you for review and approval back in October, you'll recall that we explicitly had the $7 million that is before you on the chart essentially earmarked. It had been tagged and reserved for this action that we're contemplating tonight. So essentially we come before you for your approval of those two things. One, to allow us to seek the approval to transfer the $7 million into the self-insurance fund, and secondly, to access and utilize those dollars that we've garnered since the budget adoption and striking date of July 1, 2017.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. This is my, I promised my last time pushing my button tonight, turning my mic on. But I just wanted to say thank you to you, Mr. Shaknovich, Mr. Stansky, Dr. Arlotto, the entire senior staff, because I know what we were supposed to have in place of that $7 million, and we've exceeded it. And I think that's just only through fiscal responsibility, fiscally responsible actions, and a lot of the operational efficiencies that have been enacted here. And I just want to say thank you, from me, just for being able to achieve that ahead of target.
Are there any other board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All right. All those in favor? Okay, motion passes 8-0. Okay. Item 6.05, we're going to move on to the policy things. Ms. Ortiz, you have another full night for us. Item 6.05 is an action item, board membership, policy BAA. Ms. Ortiz.
Good evening, Jeanette Ortiz.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, do I have to? Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy BAA, subject to final correction for style and format.
Okay. All right. Ms. Ortiz.
Good evening. For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. Policy BAA board membership is up on third reading for your approval.
Are there any questions or comments on this policy? Any public comment? All right, all those in favor? Motion passes. All right, item 6.06, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy BAB, subject to final correction for style and format.
Okay. All right. Ms. Ortiz, anything?
I don't have anything to add.
Oh, and nothing to add. Okay, are there any board questions or comments? Any public comment? Yes, Ms. Oh, no, oh, she's ready to vote. All those in favor? Motion passes. All right. Item 6.07, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy BB, subject to final correction for style and format.
Are there any board questions or comments? Is there, oh, I'm sorry. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Okay, all those in favor? Motion passes. Item 6.08, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy BFA, subject to final correction for style and format.
Okay. Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All right, all those in favor? Motion passes. Item 6.10, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
6.09.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I picked up too many at one time. Stuck together, sorry. Item 6.09, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
My recommendation does not change. I am recommending approval of policy KE, subject to final correction for style and format.
Okay. Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Okay. All those in favor of student fundraising activities, policy KE? Okay, motion passes. All right, item 6.10, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy KD, subject to final correction for style and format.
Second.
All right. Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Okay, all those in favor of visitors to the schools at policy KD? Motion passes. All right. Item 6.11, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend approval of policy DJ, subject to final correction for style and format.
Okay. Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Okay. All those in favor of funding proposals, grants, and special requests, policy DJ? Okay. Motion passes. All right. Item 6.12, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I am recommending rescinding policies DJA, DJB, and DJC.
Okay. Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Okay. All those in favor of rescinding these policies? Okay. Motion passes. Item 6.13 is an information item. Ms. Ortiz.
For the record, again, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. The Division of Financial Operations and the Partnerships Development and Marketing Office are bringing policy DCA, gifts, bequests, and donations before you for first reading. This policy was last revised on February 6th, 2008. The updated policy includes solicitations to be covered in the policy and clarifies the review and acceptance process for gifts, bequests, donations, and solicitations at schools and central office. The policy will be posted on our website for 30 days for public comment, and we can answer any questions you may have.
Are there any board questions or comments regarding this policy? Is there any public comment? All right, we'll be waiting for public comment. Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. All right, item 7.01 is a review item, the monthly financial status report. Are there any board questions or comments regarding the monthly financial status report? Okay. Is there any public comment? All right, thank you very much. All right, so that brings us to the end of the December 20th meeting. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, January 10th at 2018 at 10 a.m. The next Board Policy Committee meeting is Wednesday, January 17th at 1 p.m. or after the board meeting, an hour after the board meeting ends, whichever comes first. Upcoming board budget committees meetings. Oh no, I'm sorry, that was the policy meeting. I said budget meeting. That's the next board policy meeting is at 1 p.m. The budget meeting, the next board budget meeting is Wednesday, January 24th at 5 p.m. Upcoming budget hearings will be at 6 p.m. Sign-ups begin at 5 p.m. The first one will be Tuesday, January 9th, 2018 at Old Mill High School. The next one will be Thursday, January 11th, 2018 here at Riva Road. There's a budget workshop will be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, January 16th, 2018 here at Riva Road. The public is welcome at that time, but no public testimony will be taken. And we have...
I move that we stand adjourned.
Do I have a second?
Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Wait, do I have a second? Second. All in favor of adjourning? Now you can go.
And I think that's the piece that people think it's not my child.
Absolutely, they do. And I am here to report that it could be anybody's child.
Right.
You know, the population that I work with, they come to me. Sometimes they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're active heroin users that started in middle school and high school with things that they thought were not, it was not going to hurt them. They, you know, they were experimenting, or, you know, they wanted to fit in, and they wanted to fit in, and they wanted to fit in, and they wanted to fit in, and